NFTs are abysmally stupid. There are better ways to pay for art, and it's depressing to find that some anime artists are turning to them. I don't blame the artists, but I do blame the people who wind up buying these. Welcome back to OtakuDaiKun. Dai here. NFTs, or non-fungible tokens, are a new way for artists to sell their art, as well as a new way for skeevy individuals to profit off of other people's work. It's popular in both a financial and meme-worthy sense, so I can understand why a struggling artist would want to use NFTs as a new source of revenue. I'm not against artists being paid for their work, but when you actually stop to think about what NFTs are and the sort of industry you're feeding into, you should realize that when it comes to supporting your favorite artists, there have always been better ways of doing it that mean a hell of a lot more. Since talent like Kizuna Ai and other artists have expressed interest in NFTs, I think it's important to talk about what they are and what it actually means to own something. I reference some information gleaned from different articles, so you can check my sources in the description if you're inclined to read up more. In essence, NFTs are trying to give buyers the ability to pretend that digital products are one of a kind, that you can become the sole owner of something that's both easily and limitlessly reproducible. This concept got me thinking about what ownership even is, and I want to share what I've come up with. Ultimately, ownership is something that you claim. You claim to own something, and by itself, that's all it is. You can walk up to a tree and say, "This is my tree." You can walk up to a seat on the couch and say, "This is my spot," but that doesn't suddenly make it yours, since there's no objective truth to your claim, unless you're delusional and think you have a God-given right to something. Thus, claims of ownership are only valuable when people recognize, accept, and abide by them. In its simplest form, this can be an agreement between people. When you get together with a group of friends and order a pizza, you might feel inclined to split that pizza evenly within the group. If you've got a group of 4 and 4 slices, then each person gets 1 slice. It's a shallow agreement we make because being fair means everyone gets a piece. None of us would want to be left without a slice because someone else took too much, so we diplomatically establish a system we agree is fair. Of course, that sort of agreement is fragile. There's nothing really stopping me from, say, licking the entire pizza and claiming it for myself. Some people will be all like, "Ew, you can have it," while others might not care and dig in regardless. It's chaos disguised as order. If you look at Warring States Japan or the Romance of the Three Kingdoms China, it's all different generals and warlords claiming territory and having those claims challenged over and over again. At any given moment, ownership would be determined by who had the dominant military force in that area, because if you said otherwise, you'd be killed. Thus, claims to ownership are typically based on a foundation of enforcement. In Shrek, villagers recognize that Shrek owns the swamp, only because they realize going into the swamp will invoke his wrath. He scares people away from his land, and for the most part that works. But when his home gets overrun by different fairy tale creatures, his claim over the swamp gets called into question. Essentially, modern society and the economic laws of our world's countries are nothing more than larger versions of this idea. The nation itself claims ownership of the land through force, only conducting diplomacy after the rest of the world acknowledges them. Then, the nation establishes laws that protect landowners and their property, agreeing on a financial system for deciding ownership. If you violate that agreement, you can be arrested for stealing, vandalizing, or trespassing on someone else's property. We enforce adherence to that agreement with legal action. But if another nation conquered us, or if aliens conquered the entire planet, they'd have no incentive to honor our laws at all. My point is that owning something is an illusion that's only as good as how others treat it. When you buy something, the receipt counts as a transfer of ownership, but that's only valuable because you live in a country that will defend your ownership by criminalizing those who try to challenge it. So that answers what ownership is, but what about why we even care? Well, ownership isn't just about claiming to own something, it's also about enjoying the benefits of that ownership. You buy a house, for instance, so that you can have a space under your control. As the owner, you get to choose who gets to be inside the house, as well as what goes on inside, within reason. Houses are physical commodities, so they provide shelter from the elements, as well as privacy from the outside world. You can even own houses you don't intend to live in, instead using them as financial assets or rental properties. If you own land, then you can choose how that land gets used. But for our purposes, what about anime, manga, games, or other forms of art? Again, if we're talking physical stuff, then buying a game or a Blu-ray lets you keep a copy of the hardware that can access the media. That way, even if it goes off the market, you can enjoy that media at your leisure. It's not intended to be reproduced or redistributed, however. Companies or individual entities can own the intellectual rights to a given property. Typically, this would be so the artist making the work can sell their work as compensation. If all they got to do was sell a single copy before the recipient pirated that work to everyone else interested in it, the artist wouldn't be able to sustain themselves. That's literally what copyright is meant to protect. With physical goods, there's always value tied to the objects themselves, because they aren't as easily replicated and have a limited stock. Bootlegs, while they are replicated, are often worse in quality, giving consumers an incentive to buy from the actual creators or official sources. Digital goods are where things get tricky. What does it mean to own a digital good? Generally speaking, access is the main venture. When you pay for Spotify or Netflix, you're paying for the ability to access songs and movies on those respective platforms. But that's more akin to going to the movie theater or renting than it is to actually buying a work on disc. To actually own something digital might be closer to saving it on your hard drive so you can play it back using your own tools. The biggest catch is that doing this is exceptionally easy. Even if you aren't given access to the file directly, there are plenty of ways of ripping that data and creating a virtually identical copy. In a lot of these cases, doing this is actually creating a better experience than trying to purchase official releases that try to limit your access with DRM or access codes. That's why on-disc DLC for video games is so atrocious. You already bought the disc, and the content you want is already on that disc, but it requires a little digital check of approval before you can access it, defeating the merit of going physical at all. To be fair, that's debating the ethics and impact of piracy on media, but there's something more specific we need to understand. The difference between physical and digital that we care about here is that unlike physical goods, digital goods can be infinitely distributed without cost or reduced quality. Owning a digital copy allows you to get the full benefits of ownership, yet there's no exclusivity. You owning that specific JPEG you downloaded from the internet means nothing to anyone else who also wants to own it, because they're just as easily able to download it too. That picture won't run out, unless it gets deleted off the internet, becomes lost media, and only a select few people were lucky enough to archive it. Even then, all it takes is for one of those people to step up and re-upload it to undo the damage. If we were talking about a famous painting, someone might gain a degree of prestige from owning an original. That's why they often sell for obscene amounts at auction, even if the art is absolute crap and took no effort. Claiming ownership of digital art doesn't necessarily carry that same prestige, at least not between other people. You own it so that you can access it, not so you can brag about it. The only person who cares that you own it is yourself, because it means you can experience it on your own terms. NFTs, however, try to change that by creating the illusion that a digital entity is one of a kind. For instance, have you ever thought about owning someone's tweet on Twitter? Like, what does that even mean? I can effectively own any tweet I want by taking a screenshot of it, and I can share that screenshot as much as I want. Perhaps you could own the source code that generates the tweet on your screen? Again, that's pretty easy to copy, and if you know how the code works, you could even forge fake tweets from people, so to say you own it is pretty pointless. All that's left is the statement, "I own this tweet," which means absolutely nothing. You can, however, infinitely tell the world you own it in an extremely obnoxious, energy-consuming fashion. That's essentially what an NFT is. A virtual statement, a receipt of sorts called a token, that says you own a specific thing. That statement gets stored in the blockchain, the same peer-to-peer system that cryptocurrency runs on. Without diving too deeply into what the hell all that means, a blockchain is basically a list that's not necessarily stored on a single server or individual system. It's a list being kept up to date by many people who are incentivized to produce the next link in that chain, the next accurate list of transactions. The goal behind cryptocurrency is to create a monetary exchange system that doesn't rely on third parties like banks. Ideally, it's a record of transactions maintained by the people participating and is considered extremely secure and accurate because it's constantly being verified by hundreds and thousands of people, often so that they can get a small amount of cryptocurrency as a reward for their efforts. One of the major problems with blockchain technology is its extremely harmful carbon footprint. Having your list become the next block in the chain requires your computer to solve a cryptographic hash of the previous block. In other words, it needs to solve an extremely complex mathematic equation designed to more or less be guessed at. You're given a value, and you have to figure out what mathematic function produced that value as its answer. For instance, there are tons of answers to the number 4. 2 plus 2, 1 plus 3, 2 times 2, 8 divided by 2. A cryptographic hash, however, is a more complex array that is so difficult to reverse engineer that you'd be better off guessing. As such, the computers that crypto miners use to solve these hashes are rapidly guessing, dedicating all of their processing power to guess as much as possible to be the first one to solve the equation and be rewarded. This means a shit ton of computers running at max power consumption, taking up an insane chunk of our world's energy use. For a sense of scale, one blockchain system, Ethereum, uses about as much electricity as the entire country of Libya. So right there, buying an NFT means putting another transaction in this blockchain. It's you needing all of this processing power to declare, "I own this thing," so that anyone who looks up the blockchain can know without a doubt that you've made that transaction, assuming they give a shit to even bother checking. Unlike the art it's supposed to represent, the transaction is in fact one of a kind. But only on that blockchain, and that's assuming people don't sell multiple NFTs all tied to the same digital work. Like, apparently this blockchain now contains the record of who owns Nyancat. Ideally, at any given moment, this blockchain says that only one person in the entire world is the owner of Nyancat. If that NFT gets sold to someone else, it should reflect in the list as a transfer of ownership. But what exactly defines Nyancat? Mind you, this isn't buying the intellectual or copyrights to Nyancat. The original artist probably still has those rights. Instead, you're buying Nyancat as if it were a tangible piece of art like the Mona Lisa, but it's not. You owning Nyancat on the blockchain is actually less valuable than just finding and downloading the damn GIF onto your computer for free. For as secure as blockchain transactions are, I don't see any rules against selling Nyancat multiple times. Maybe someone could own Nyancat as a still image, and someone else can buy the version on YouTube with music. If someone else re-uploads Nyancat, can that second upload also count as a separate item, even though it's the exact same thing? Plus, who says this one blockchain constitutes as genuine ownership? Why not start a blockchain between you and your friends? The statement, "I own Nyancat," is just as valuable to that chain as it is to Ethereum's record. The only difference is the number of people using it. But if world governments don't enforce NFT purchases the same way they enforce copyright, then really, what good is that? If all it takes to own Nyancat is to say you own it, then technically we all own Nyancat if we say so. It's just that some of us are louder and more persistent about it than others. The most expensive NFT sale thus far has been Mike Winkleman's Every Days, The First 5,000 Days, a collage of his previous works that sold for a whopping $69 million at auction. I can imagine that if you're a rich person, whose friends are all filthy rich too, and all of them understand or use crypto, then perhaps there's some bragging rights to be had in owning an NFT. From an artist's perspective, it can be hard earning money from digital art. A lot of people will find your art, repost it somewhere else without giving credit, and allow millions of people to have the full-res image downloaded on their computer without paying you a dime. Thus, the idea of selling your work for $69 million must look insanely attractive. Heck, imagine if I sold this video for that much. With NFTs, that would actually be possible. At the end of the day, though, it's just a consumer buying from an artist. If someone really wanted to spend that much on digital art, they could just as easily order a signed print from the artist and pay that much for it. It would actually give them something to own, without feeding into an economic system known for killing the planet. Plus, a lot of artwork made to be sold as NFTs are absurdly ugly. At least when it comes to anime art, there's a sense of aesthetic beauty. Sadly though, it seems some Japanese artists are considering the NFT market. Kizuna Ai, when announcing a hiatus from her YouTube career, mentioned being interested in NFTs. I can only speculate what the hell she means by that. Is she gonna sell herself on the blockchain? Mel Kishida, the artist behind the Blue Reflection games, has expressed her interest in making art specifically designed as NFTs. Just recently, she's announced opening a profile on Foundation.app, though as of this video it's still in progress. Thankfully, other platforms are smarter about this. Steam doesn't allow for the sale of NFT-based games. That is, assuming they still have any integrity. The Japanese art commission platform Skeb has declared that they will not be supporting NFTs on the site. Its CEO, Kazunari Kida, has come to a lot of the same conclusions as me. Ownership of an NFT isn't as practical or legally recognized as copyright. It can verify ownership of the token purchased, but not the actual art it represents, which is often a single URL that can easily be shared. Even worse, the current blockchain system has no means of verifying that an NFT is actually being created by the artist who made that work. Tokens can be made and sold without supporting or even being noticed by the artist. That's why we're seeing NFTs sold for works from deceased artists. Plus, if you're an official business, how the hell should you go about filing income or sales tax on NFT transactions? Being a part of a more centralized entity has both perks and downsides after all. That said, Skeb's CEO does think that selling NFTs is fine, so long as everyone involved understands exactly what they are without confusing them with intellectual property rights. As for me, all I can ask is, why even bother? I get it. Artists and companies that rely on income from their art hate how easy it is to copy and distribute their work without permission. If you look at the awesome artists on Twitter, they really don't want you reposting their stuff, especially without giving credit. At the same time though, we consumers don't want bullshit like DRM hindering how we can enjoy digital media. It gets in the way of the experience people want when they actually pay to own digital content, because with a DRM, you don't really own it. That said, NFTs don't really mean owning art either. It's literally an expensive certificate claiming you're the sole owner of something that tons of people already have for free. If you want that certificate bad enough, I'm sure the artist could acknowledge you as the owner without relying on a blockchain that screws over the environment. The world doesn't need to know that you own a damn JPEG. That's something that should only matter to you and maybe the artist who made it. In the end, the simple truth is that if artists can't make money off their work, they likely won't be able to make more of it. The shift to digital distribution has threatened the traditional way artists have used to make money. We don't necessarily have to buy things to get the benefit of owning them anymore. That said, creators that understand this have found other ways of making money, some of which are actually superior to old methods. If you have an artist you love and respect, don't support or encourage them by buying NFTs. Take what money you would have used to buy an NFT and either donate it to them directly or go through the various platforms they're part of. When it comes to anime artists, Pixiv allows you to give artists money as well as make commissions directly through their site. Fontia is a platform similar to Patreon that caters to supporting Japanese artists. Heck, a lot of those artists also use Patreon, which is more internationally friendly. As I mentioned earlier, Skeb is a platform for supporting artists by commissioning their work. I'm currently using it to get some art made of Daichan to share with y'all. Lastly, these artists also often sell physical goods such as prints, art books, acrylic stands, stickers, and other stuff you can actually appreciate beyond the bounds of a computer screen. For all intents and purposes, you already own their stuff digitally the moment you right-click and save it, or torrent it, or emulate it. Consuming stuff that way is totally fine, but don't forget to give back through these various, more meaningful methods. Do you agree or disagree with anything I've said? I'm all ears, or eyes in this case, so please make use of the comments below. Before I go ahead and roll the credits, I want to give a special shout out to my $10 supporters: Video Gamer 75, Samuel Gersten, Stephen Elak, Otaku Mom, Jens Bauman, Mystic Samurai 1983, Freebrick, RNG or Shuffles 1498, Happy, and SF Giants fan Mike. Thank you so much. Thanks for watching!
If you enjoy this channel, help us grow by liking, commenting, sharing the video, subscribing to OtakuDaiKun, and
most of all, smashing that notification bell so you don't miss out on all of our anime discussion, lore, or Let's Play content.
You can support us directly through Patreon, Subscribestar, or our YouTube membership, all of which come with benefits like exclusive vids and early access.
As always,
Celebrate your fandom!